Hello, my name is Tammy Thompson. I'm the Public Relations Coordinator here at West Kentucky Community and Technical College, and I am also on the One Book Read Committee. And that is what this program is about. It is about this year's One Book Read of Little Princes by Conor Grennan. I'd like to introduce my guests. I have with me Kim Russell, who is our English Program Coordinator and another One Book Committee member. And our co-chairs of this year's One Book Read, Amy Sullivan, who is our Matheson Library Director, and she is a co-chair along with Melissa Duncan, who is the Executive Director of the Challenger Learning Center. And so, ladies, I want to welcome you here. And we're just going to talk a little bit about the book and the One Book Read, and I want to start there with Amy, because many people who are watching probably know what a One Book Read is, but I know there's several that don't. So Amy, tell us, what is a One Book Read?
Sure. A One Book Read is just that. We all read one book all year long. It's a community-wide initiative, not only a campus initiative, but it has become a community-wide initiative to promote literacy, promote reading. We read the same book all year long in an academic year, and by we, I mean not only the campus, all the English classes on campus, that's where it began, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure. But we also reach out to our community. Our public library, McCracken County Public Library, partners with us, all the dual credit students in the area high schools who also read the book in their English classes. They all read the book, as well as book clubs in the area, and actually, this has just stretched out through the years, and it just keeps growing. So it is a literacy initiative here on campus.
Wonderful. Melissa, I just want, as the Challenger Learning Center Director, I have to just say, many people are thinking, okay, the Challenger Learning Center deals with science, technology, engineering, and math. So how did you and the Challenger Learning Center get involved with the One Book Read?
It's a good question, Tammy, but you do need to read to be able to do all those things. But no, the very first year, which was in 2008, we decided to bring Homer Hickam to campus. Homer Hickam was the author of October Sky, Our Rocket Boys. Okay. And so it was a natural fit for me in the Challenger Center to be involved in that committee. But however, I do love to read, and it is a passion for me. So I've kind of stayed with it throughout the years. And so since 2008, we've had many authors. We've had Homer Hickam, Garth Stein, Silas House, David Baldacci, Jeanette Walls, Christina Baker-Klein, Jamie Ford, and Ron Rash. And of course, Conor Grennan will be our 9th author. So I think many of you will recognize a lot of those names. And the very first one, Homer Hickam, had such a great response from the community and from the students and from the college. And Homer was so gracious and kind, and everybody enjoyed meeting him. And it was just great to be able to read that book and then meet the actual author here at West Kentucky Community and Technical College. And the idea just kept going, and so here we are 9 years later.
So we are going to meet Conor Grennan.
Yes, we will.
Amy, when are we going to meet him?
March 28th and March 29th, Conor will be on campus, and that is the culminated event of the One Book Read. That is what we all year long read and get excited about, is meeting that author. Many of our students especially, and people in the community, have never had the opportunity to meet a best-selling author, and that is what is so fantastic about this event, is because they can come for free to meet a best-selling author, get an autograph, have a conversation, ask a question. It's just a wonderful opportunity.
Signed.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful. So Kim, you are the English Program Coordinator. So how is it that you are tied in with the One Book Read?
Well, a few ways. One is that I'm part of the small group who works together to select the book every year, and then I also work with the English faculty and get their feel for what we want to do and how we can use those books in our classes. And then of course with the English faculty making up kind of the faculty who really lead this initiative on campus, it's kind of important that I sort of act as an ambassador with them as well.
Well, Amy mentioned that this is not just for college students.
Not at all.
So this is for high school students. How do you choose a book that fits all those wide ranges of ages?
Well, you go into a bookstore and you'll notice the selection is huge and the possibilities are endless, but we have some really specific criteria that we're looking for when we're trying to think about, okay, what's next? And especially we're coming up on our 10th year, And the what's next becomes more important every time. I think people are really, they anticipate what we'll do, and this has really become an important part of our community. So as we're going through selecting, there are several things we're keeping in mind. One thing, obviously, we learned really early on, and I think Homer Hickam really helped set the trend for this. Is this going to be a personal, is the author going to be that kind of person who will interact well with our students and our faculty and our community? Is this person going to be, welcoming and approachable? Therefore, obviously, we don't read anyone who's dead.
Right.
And then, of course, you do have to think about budget.
Right.
We learned a lot early on. Some of the authors we were looking at were $100,000 for an hour.
Wow.
Yeah. So we think about our budget. We do have to think about that age appropriateness, because we would, as many people as we can get involved, we're just more and more thrilled to be able to do that. So having, anywhere from local middle school students to senior citizens in our community, it needs to be something that a lot of age groups can relate to, and that it's appropriate to be taught in a classroom, and we need that kind of support as well. So that's something. So the author, the subject matter, obviously, with teaching it on campus, we feel like we need to think about our student learning outcomes.
Right.
So one of the things that really helped us this year was that idea of social and personal responsibility. That's something that's very important to us on this campus, and we felt like that book really communicated that. And then also we do have a goal of being multicultural and promoting diversity, and we felt like this book and several of our other books have really helped broaden our students' horizons. So
So tell me, so Little Princess, I think, reaches all of the criteria that you've said, but tell us a little bit about how it ties into all of that criteria. What is it? Tell us a little bit about the book.
Okay, so when we were first selecting, one of the committee members, Dr. Kevin Garricky, he had read this with his daughters, and he was so inspired by it and brought it to the committee and told us a little bit of what it was about. And the minute he did, we were so excited to read it. So it's the story of this young man who's been working for a few years, but he's still young. He's in his 30s, and he's decided he's saved up all this money, and he's going to have an adventure traveling around the world. But before he does that, he feels maybe a little bit guilty for spending that kind of money on himself just for pleasure. So he decides that he's going to do a little bit of service. And I think also he realizes that saying, oh, I worked with some poor children in Nepal, and that'll really impress the ladies. So
and his mother and his friends
aren't the purest in the world. And we loved that it's a memoir, and he really does reveal that about himself. He's honest about who he is, and you get to see that change in his heart. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But he gets there, and of course, we get to experience that culture shock and the discomfort, and sort of his arrogance, and very, very quickly turning into this humility. And and he quickly kind of falls in love with these children once he's able to open his heart up a little bit. And then we find out that these orphans aren't actually, for the most part, orphans at all. And
so that's what brings the whole story even deeper for him. I want to read an excerpt from the book. It says, just to go with what you said, he says, I hadn't realized until that moment when he's getting ready to go into the orphanage how much I didn't want to walk through that gate. What I wanted was to tell people I had volunteered in an orphanage. Now that I was actually here, the whole idea of volunteering in this country seemed ludicrous. This hadn't been lost on my friends back home, a number of them who gently suggested that caring for orphans was not exactly what God had in mind for me. So right before he walks into this orphanage in Nepal, he's thinking, what have I got myself into?
He doesn't even know how to use the toilets in Nepal, and he had ignored the idea that he had seen some warnings that there was a civil war, but he thought, so it's just a massive, rude awakening.
Right.
And I think that one of the great takeaways is you can either grow from that or run away scared. And I think that it transforms him and he grows beautifully from that. And I hope that's what people get from that.
Well, this is where he started. This is how his trip started. It was all about him. He says he arrived in Bangkok, he met some close friends, they biked, they hiked, they sailed boats. Then they went on the Amazon and did all these experiences. So this was like his last thing he wanted to do because he, like I said, he didn't want everybody to think it's all about me. So when he first goes through the gate, what happens?
The children just swarm him, and it's overpowering how many children are there and how they are just drawn to him immediately. So it's a quick introduction, yes.
And they just and he is literally he has to carry them to the front of the orphanage, and he's just bombarded with them. And like Kim said, he had no experience, Melissa, with children, right? He had no experience with children whatsoever. No nieces, no nephews, no brothers and sisters. This was children, he didn't know what he was going to do with these children.
But he quickly learned how sweet and caring and loving these children were, and he himself fell in love with them pretty quickly. And then as we continue on with the story, it's revealed later that they aren't indeed orphans, most of them, like you mentioned, that they actually were trafficked children that ended up here in this orphanage.
So we'll talk a little bit about how that came about for him. He was there. He was there for 3 months initially. He left for a little while. He came back. The children said, please, you have to come back. They called him brother. That's brother and sister. And they didn't understand his name until he, Conor. That's how he kind of got the name around. So they called him Conor. That he didn't understand his name. So when he came back, he met a woman who was very important to a couple of the children there. The mother of a couple of the children, and a woman who said, explained to him, these children are not what you think. So what was his, you think his thought process was, wait a second, I'm thinking these people have nobody, and that's not true.
Well, it's so foreign from anything that I think most of us can conceive of happening in this country. We haven't really experienced a war on our soil, and I don't think that we understand how these children could be removed from their homes like they were. But we learned that in order to, what they thought, get their children to safety, they entrusted them to this man whom they gave their entire life savings to in order to bring their children to safety. And, as we learn very quickly, he's a notorious child trafficker.
To keep them from having to go fight in the war. That was the story that he would tell parents. And
well, what the rebel army was saying is that they needed to build their army
with children.
With children. So they went to the parents and said, you have to give up one child to be a soldier. And so these parents, they thought, I don't want to do that. So like you said, they're from a very poor country.
Well, I think they're from a very remote area too.
Okay.
So anybody could have come in and duped them because they did not know any better. They didn't have access to the news. They didn't have access to the internet and telephones. So somebody comes in and tells you, hey, your child's going to be taken and become a soldier. Your child will die. I will save your child. You don't know any better. You're going to do it.
Right. So that's exactly, they were duped, just like, and so they, like you said, sold everything. They sold their homes, they sold all their possessions to try to save their children and give to this man who they believed were going to take care of them. And
I think as a whole, from having watched the Highway to Dampus kickoff movie that we did last week, I think the Nepals were very trusting people too. That came out in the movie a lot. So the parents really thought that this person was trying to do good for them, and really wanted to trust them to do that for their children.
And the most important thing, just like our children are to us, is the most important thing. And they wanted to do whatever they could do. And you mentioned a movie that was at the Maiden Alley Cinema, and it had a great crowd, and it tied directly into the book.
It did. So we always try to have some kind of a kickoff event. So back when Homer Hickam came, we of course showed October Sky,
Right.
and that was at Maiden Alley, and so we hadn't done that in a while, so we thought we would maybe try to find something that would work with Little Princes. And one of our student organizations came across this Highway to Dampus movie, and although it was not the exact story of Little Princess, it was approved by Conor and his agent, and it showed the culture of Nepal. It showed the just the beauty of the landscape and the people of Nepal. And it dealt with an orphanage. It was a little bit different situation. The children in the movie, which was a fiction movie, but the children in the movie were true orphans. But the main character was a celebrity that had an issue in the tabloids. And to come to Nepal and work with these orphans and give them things was basically a penance for her misdoings in England.
Kind of a parallel between
so it was very parallel. It was very parallel. So many people that came, I think, were able to, having read the book, were able to relate to the movie and to kind of have a visual. It's always good to get a visual when you read something. So that was our big kickoff for the book, and we have other kickoffs that Kim and Amy have been involved in. So
Okay, so tell us a little bit about some of the other things that we've done or for the one book.
Well, one of the things that we really try to think about as we're reading these one book reads is ways that these books really can enrich the campus and kind of speak to multidisciplines. So one of the programs that we had earlier in the year had to do with studying abroad and serving abroad. So we invited some of our folks from campus who had either coordinated those events or gone on those events to share those experiences, what it's like to go and be in a completely new environment and meet these new people and try to adjust to a different culture and what you accomplish. But then also, I think the most important thing is how they grew and what they got from that experience. And then not too long after that, we had an event. We felt like it was really, really important to promote the understanding of human trafficking and to call attention to the fact that this is not just a third world problem, but it's something that happens in the United States. We brought in some local law enforcement and also Carol Smith from a ministry who helps traffic victims in this area and really educated our students in our community about the issue of human trafficking. It was a wonderful program.
You mentioned that it's not just for a third world country, but I have a statistic that says according to the U.S. State Department, 600,000 to 800,000 people are trafficked across international borders every year. 80% are female and half are children. So the numbers are staggering. And it happens, like you said, here in our area. And that I was at the trafficking event, and it was an eye-opening experience to hear that it happens here and that this organization helps those that have been trafficked try to adapt back into the community.
So that's something the committee recognized as well as far as this local ministry, and so we have partnered with them to help collect items. It's called Victory House, Victory Through Grace Ministries, and we have been collecting items to help this local organization in with this theme of trafficking here in our local area. And we thought our students and our faculty and staff and our community would be very supportive, and they have been wanting to reach out and try to help this problem locally. So
there'll be more information that you're also going to, when Conor Grennan is here on March 28th and 29th, we're going to be collecting items for the Victory House then as well. So we're going to get some information out to the public about items that we can bring. Off the top of your head, do you know things like toilet paper?
Things like, yes, toiletries and toilet paper, laundry detergent, things that the Victory House uses for these. It's basically for women who are victims of trafficking. So it's a house that they run to support these women, and so they need all kinds of items like that. So we will be putting a list out of things that are in most need.
So we, of course, invite all of you to come to the event to meet Conor Grennan on March 28th and 29th, but please bring an item with you. something that could be for the Victory House, that we can help and be a part of that ministry as well. So I just want to go back to where Conor Grennan, it wasn't just that, okay, I'm here for 3 months, I come back for a year, I visit these kids. He fell in love with these children. And there were 18 in the Little Prince's orphanage, and they were really better off than a lot of the children that he came into contact with. So there were 7 children in particular that he met or found out about that was at this mother's house that he met, that she was trying to feed and take care of. And they were starving. So his idea was to go and try to find a place for these 7 children. And he finally did, with the help of the child welfare, kind of like the governor or director of the child welfare that really was trying to help him. And he'd been after this guy who had trafficked these children for a long time and couldn't get him. So he worked with all of these people to find a place for these 7 people. Then he left because the Civil War that Kim mentioned kicked off, and he needed to get out of Nepal. When he came back, he found out something really that wasn't very good, that they were gone again. So then he starts, okay, now something has to happen. And he began on a journey to find the families of these 7. So tell me a little bit about this journey. I mean, was it easy? Was it something that he could just easily, in a few hours, go and meet these parents and find out, okay, here's your kids?
No, he had to cross lots of rugged terrain. It was days of journeys. He had a guide with him to help him to navigate, because this is something, obviously, he's not familiar with the land and the area, the language barrier, all of that. So it was a very, very long journey to do this, but he met these families. He had to get with each and every one, trying to locate them. It was a lot of research. It was a lot of, he got hurt during the journey, so it was a very big struggle for him. So the book, recounts all of that, the whole journey to get these families.
But he also had to, even though the Civil War was technically over, there were still things going on that when you get deep into the mountains of Nepal, there's still some people who are not thrilled you're there. So he and his guides had to navigate that as well. Didn't they have to try to figure out how to be safe themselves, trying to find these families of these kids? And like you said, he got hurt. So he's separated at one point from his main travel companions and had to go on. One time I remember, it was 14 hours that he traveled, 14 hours one way to get there. And you mentioned that he had to do a lot of research. What do you mean by that for these kids?
Well, he just had to figure out what happened with each particular family with these children. It took a lot of talking to different people. He had to interview many people around the area to find out the connection.
And the guides had to say, I know this person, this person's still alive.
You know who, this person. And so it took a lot of time to be able to connect those things.
Google search didn't
No,
help.
there is no Google.
The Facebook accounts really didn't do much to help him out.
And that movie Highway to Damp is, you think highway. When we think highway, we think I-24.
No highway.
Or even 286, which isn't much of a highway. But this was literally a gravel niche, like maybe big enough for a truck. And they'd have to go through streams and rivers.
At one point he was there. There were things on top of where he was, where things were falling, and animals were walking on a small path up above him, and so. But one of the things that I wanted to really bring up, the research that he did, he had very detailed, specific questions, and he was very direct about these questions because he wanted to know why. Why and how could you do this? Because he did not understand. So when he was going through his interpreter and they were saying, how do you know? Why did you do this? And how come? He didn't understand until he met them what they gave up in order to.
I think that
them.
he's coming from that Western mindset. I don't think that even at that point he's really able to understand what led to those things, the decisions that the parents made. And I think it's important that our students see that as well, that you know, we need to be able to maybe walk a mile in people's shoes a little bit so that
Right.
we can understand their experiences. And I think that really shows that transformation in him and how transformative that can be. So,
Well, I think at one point he actually, when he saw that they were reunited, and the level of emotion in that for the parents who thought their children were alive and well but could be dead, and the children certainly thought their parents were dead because or were hiding because the trafficker said, if you tell, you know, your mom or your dad aren't going to make it. So they were afraid to say that their mom and dad might be still alive because of what he had said. And these parents who were reunited with their children who thought they might have been lost forever, he did that.
I think
He did
he
that.
discovers his life's purpose. Why he's here, and you know, not just to go to work and then have a little bit of fun and hang out
Right.
with your friends, but to truly
Have a purpose.
do something with your life.
And he goes and actually goes a little farther here at
does.
home. What does he?
So it continues. He had, the volunteering, and people say that all the time, I want to volunteer for this, but he actually became the ultimate volunteer because he continues this mission now. He created an organization called Next Generation Nepal, where he continues this journey to reunite many children. He discovered that this is not an isolated incident. This is
Right.
all over the country.
It's the tip of the iceberg.
It is the tip of the iceberg. So he continues that mission with this Next Generation Nepal organization, which it rebuilds those family connections torn apart by child trafficking. So
he continues the journey and he continues
does.
the passion that he developed while he was there in Nepal. Thank you for joining us. I mean, our time's passed really quickly. We do want to tell you again, Amy, tell us again, when will he be here?
Tuesday and Wednesday, March 28th and March 29th, 2017. Tuesday is an evening event. It begins with a 6 o'clock opening reception and then a 7 o'clock presentation by Conor Grennan, and then followed by a book signing. So that is a great, wonderful event, and many of the community are able to come to that. And then on Wednesday, March 29th at 11 a.m. is our student presentation, and that's although others are welcome to join us, it's primarily for our students at West Kentucky Community and Technical College, as well as all of the dual credit students in the area that have been reading the book. So he does a couple different presentations. He focuses specifically with our students who have been doing many activities year-round preparing for this appearance. So
Wonderful. So I just want to end with one thing. I want to end with how he describes his volunteering and how he kind of came full circle. He says the book he named Little Princes in honor of those that in the orphanage because it's their story that he's telling. He says how it can change, volunteering can change your life so completely in ways you could never imagine. How volunteering, whether it's in an impoverished third world nation or in your hometown, requires only that you show up. Don't worry how little of your time or resources you may offer, just offer it and see what happens. So that's a lot about what this book is and about Conor Grennan. So I appreciate you joining us, and we'll see you next time.